Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Indie Zone podcast. My name is Kathy. Over the course of the past several days, we have presented a number of presentations to you here on our podcast focusing on the Idaho versus Kohberger case that specifically address deadlines for trial-related materials that are set forth within the October 9th pretrial and trial order that was rendered by Judge Stephen J. Hippler, who will be presiding over the forthcoming jury trial in this case. Page 1 of that October 9th order addresses the process of when voir dire will happen and when the jury trial commences. If you go to the section of that same order, there is a section that is entitled D as in David, Trial Materials in bold lettering. We have gone over every single one of these items and addressed them in prior episodes of the Indie Zone podcast. The only item that is left for us to consider as the public is the issue of trial briefs. If you look at the second bulleted paragraph, trial briefs is attached to and it's combined with something else. It's called proposed jury instructions and trial briefs. We have already addressed proposed jury instructions. Let's now consider this issue regarding trial briefs. According to the court's order, both sides will file their respective trial briefs. Shall be filed. That is the exact language here by April 14th, 2025. So this tells us that on or before that hard deadline, unless the court changes it, as the court did recently with respect to the schedule for the motions in limine that were also attached to and set by this same court order. That is the hard deadline for when trial briefs by both sides are due to be filed. April 14th, 2025. Now, what is a trial brief? Because there's nothing here that is specifying what needs to be filed, what it is. Well, trial briefs, generally speaking, is a legal document that the parties will file with the court prior to the time, usually, the trial happens. And we see here that Judge Hippler does want this document filed well before the start of the trial. Sometimes a court will order it to be entered on the eve of the trial or even during the trial after it starts. But here it is set by court order to be filed on or before April 14th, 2025. These trial briefs, generally speaking now, what they do, they're used to educate the court on a specific legal issue that the side that's presenting the trial brief wants to direct the court's attention to for the court's consideration. It could be simply a chronology of the facts of the case. In other words, starting from the first item that was filed in this case. If this was the state's trial brief, they would go into the affidavit of probable cause, states this and this and this, and listing in chronological order what led the state of Idaho to conclude that Mr. Kohberger was the sole and the correct defendant in the case, and all of the things that have happened thereafter. If it's the defense, they would do the opposite. They would say why they feel that Mr. Kohberger is not the correct defendant in this case and cite to the facts in the record that would support that. There could be complex legal matters that are raised. There could be evidentiary matters that are raised, but everything you would expect to see pinpointed to the record and supported by legal authority, a rule of court, rule of evidence, a constitutional provision, state or federal, case law, state or federal, and the like. This will now conclude this episode of the Indie Zone podcast. This is Kathy. Thank you as always for joining us here today.